When I saw my sister walking down the aisle in that white dress, holding the man who once promised me forever, I swear the air left my body. I stood there, quiet, expressionless, the smile on my face stretched thin like an old photograph fading at the edges. Around me, people clapped, cried, cheered. My mother dabbed her eyes with the corner of her dupatta, whispering, "At least one of my daughters found happiness." No one knew the secret that burned inside my chest like coal, that the groom, standing beside my younger sister, was the same man who used to be my husband. His name was Adil, and once he was my whole world. It wasn't supposed to be like this. If you had told me 5 years earlier that my own sister, Sarah, would one day marry the man who broke my heart, I would have laughed, maybe even scolded you for being cruel. Sarah was always the gentle one, the sweet one. Growing up, everyone adored her. Her teachers, neighbors, relatives. She had a way of walking into a room and pulling the light toward her. I didn't resent her for it, at least not in the beginning. I was the responsible one, the eldest. The one who woke early to make breakfast before school, who stayed up late helping our mother with chores. My dreams were simple: a good marriage, a peaceful home, a small family built on honesty. When I met Adil, he was everything I'd ever prayed for: kind, funny, grounded. He wasn't wealthy, but he was sincere, or at least I thought he was. We married young. I was 24, he was 27. Those early days, they were golden. We rented a small apartment on the edge of Lahore, with walls the color of butter and a balcony full of plants I couldn't keep alive. We'd sit there after dinner, drinking tea, watching the city lights. Sometimes he'd rest his head on my lap and hum songs he barely remembered. And I would close my eyes and think, I've made it. This is happiness. But happiness, I've learned, is fragile, like glass. Beautiful, but quick to shatter if held too tightly. The first crack appeared quietly. Sarah started visiting more often after her graduation. My mother would insist, she misses her appa. Don't be so formal, and I wasn't. I loved having her around. She'd help with the dishes, bring little gifts, make Adil laugh in that effortless way she always did. I never noticed the glances, the small stolen looks between them. Not at first. When she teased him, he'd smile longer than usual. When she spoke, his eyes would linger, not inappropriately, just attentively. It was subtle enough to ignore, and I told myself I was imagining things. After all, she was my sister, my blood. I wanted to believe that. One evening, after dinner, I walked into the kitchen to find them whispering, heads close together. When I entered, they jumped apart, laughing nervously. "What's going on?" I asked lightly, drying my hands on a towel. Sarah grinned. "Nothing, Appa. I was just telling Adil Bai that you still can't cook biryani without burning the bottom layer." Adil chuckled, rubbing his neck. "She's right, you know." I smiled, outwardly. But inside, something shifted. A small, bitter seed planted itself in the quiet corners of my heart. Time went on. Adil became distant, tired, distracted, always on his phone. I asked if something was wrong. He'd say work was stressful. We were trying for a baby then, and every month that passed without good news only widened the gap between us. He started sleeping later, staying out longer. He'd come home smelling faintly of jasmine, not the kind I wore. I blamed myself. I told myself he was just overwhelmed, that I should be more patient, more supportive. I prayed harder, cooked his favorite dishes, even bought a new dress to surprise him one evening. He didn't notice. That night, he came home past midnight. His phone buzzed on the table while he showered. I didn't mean to look, but the screen lit up with a name I knew too well. Sarah. My breath caught. I opened the message. It was just a simple, "reached home safely." My stomach twisted. Why would she text him that? And why the heart? I waited. The next morning, I asked her casually over breakfast. "I didn't know you and Adil were chatting so much these days." She looked up from her toast, surprised, then smiled. "Oh, we were just discussing something for you." A surprise? A surprise. And somehow that word, innocent as it sounded, became poison. Weeks later, the surprise never came. Instead, Adil came home one evening, eyes downcast, lips trembling. "We need to talk," he said. He didn't sit. He didn't hold my hand. I don't think this marriage is working anymore." I froze. "What do you mean? We've been married for 5 years. He cut me off. "I've tried, but I'm not happy. I think it's best if we separate before we destroy each other." There was no anger in his voice, just exhaustion, like a man confessing to a crime he'd already forgiven himself for. I stared at him. "Is there someone else?" He hesitated, just long enough for me to have my answer. Tears blurred my vision, and the world tilted. "I see," I whispered. He left a week later. No dramatic fight, no shouting, just silence. Sarah stopped visiting after that. She claimed she was busy with work. Mother said she was avoiding the tension. I wanted to believe that too. Months turned into years. I rebuilt myself, piece by piece. I started teaching at a nearby school, saved money, moved into a smaller apartment. And then, one day, I saw it. A photo on Facebook. Sarah in a bridal dress. Adil beside her, his arm wrapped around her waist, both smiling. The caption read, "New beginnings." My hands went cold. The teacup slipped, shattering on the floor. And for the first time in years, I screamed. I don't remember much about that day after I saw the photo, only fragments. The sound of glass cracking beneath my feet, the faint taste of blood where I'd bitten my lip to keep from crying. My mother's voice on the phone, trembling between joy and fear. "She didn't tell me, Beta," she said. "Sarah wanted to surprise us. Adil proposed last month." Surprise. That word again, now tainted, soaked in irony. I sat on the kitchen floor, the broken pieces of the cup around me, and thought, how could my own sister do this to me? But even in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to curse her. I just felt hollow. Betrayal doesn't always come with rage. Sometimes it's a quiet collapse, like a building crumbling from the inside while the facade still stands. For months I avoided family gatherings. Mother pleaded, "At least attend her walima." But I couldn't. Not because I hated them, but because I knew I'd cry and I didn't want Sarah to see me weak. When people asked about Adil, I told them we separated peacefully. No one needed to know the truth. Then, one morning, nearly 2 years after their wedding, I received another call. It was my mother again. Her voice sounded anxious. "Sarah's been admitted to the hospital. She's in labor. The baby's coming early." I froze. A strange ache spread through me, a mix of dread and something softer. Despite everything, I couldn't ignore her. "I'll come," I said quietly. When I reached the hospital, the corridors smelled of antiseptic and new life. Adil was pacing outside the maternity ward, disheveled, his shirt half untucked. Our eyes met. The first time in years, he looked startled. "You came." "I came for my mother," I said, though the lie felt thin. He nodded, rubbing his palms together. "She's been in labor since morning. The doctors say it's a boy." I looked away. "Congratulations." The word lodged in my throat like sandpaper. An hour later, a nurse came out smiling. "It's a healthy baby boy." Adil rushed in first. I followed a few minutes later, hesitating at the door. Sarah lay on the bed, pale but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment something passed between us. Guilt, relief, maybe love. "Appa," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Meet him." I stepped closer. The baby's face was round and soft, his tiny fists clenched tight. He looked so peaceful, untouched by the mess that brought him here. "What's his name?" I asked. She smiled weakly. "Ayan." Adil placed his hand on her shoulder, beaming. He's perfect, isn't he? I nodded, swallowing hard. He is. And as I looked at that little boy, something inside me shifted. I felt connected, deeply, inexplicably. The months that followed were strange. I told myself I wouldn't see them again, but life has a cruel sense of irony. Sarah developed complications after childbirth. Depression, exhaustion, things she tried to hide behind fake smiles and busy routines. My mother called me one evening, crying. "She needs help," she said. "Adil's job keeps him traveling. The baby cries all night. She's not eating. Please, Beta, go to her. You're the only one she trusts." I wanted to say no. I wanted to remind her what Sarah had done, but I couldn't. So the next morning, I knocked on their door. When Sarah opened it, she looked smaller somehow, her hair unkempt, eyes ringed with fatigue. "Appa," she said softly, tears instantly filling her eyes. "I'm so sorry." "For everything." I didn't answer. I just stepped forward and hugged her. That hug, it wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a beginning. Days turned into weeks. I started coming every morning to help. I'd rock Ayan to sleep, feed him, sing old lullabies our mother used to sing to us. Sometimes Sarah would sleep for hours, exhausted, trusting me completely. Adil was mostly absent, always on business trips. I didn't care to ask where. One afternoon, while Sarah napped, I was changing Ayan's clothes when I noticed something, a small birthmark shaped like a crescent moon just below his shoulder. I froze. That mark. I knew it. I had the same one. So did my father. It was a small family trait, a genetic oddity. I brushed it off at first, but the thought stayed. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop staring at Ayan. His eyes, that deep hazel, the same color as mine. Not Sarah's, not Adil's. The realization came slow, like fog clearing over water, and then it hit me all at once. I sat there holding him, heart racing. Could it be? Number. It's impossible. But the more I looked, the more undeniable it became. Ayan wasn't just my nephew. He was my son. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every memory, the years before my marriage fell apart, the failed attempts to conceive, the sudden change in Adil's behavior, Sarah's odd visits to help with the doctor. Had she known then? Was she pregnant before she married him? My stomach turned. The next morning, I confronted her. We were alone in the kitchen. Ayan was asleep in the next room. I tried to sound calm. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" She looked up from the dishes, tired but gentle. "Of course." That birthmark on Ayan's shoulder. I hesitated. Did anyone else in Adil's family have it? She froze, just for a second, but I saw it, the flicker of panic. "No," she said quickly, turning away. "It's probably random." I stepped closer. "Sarah, don't lie to me." "Please." She dropped the plate in the sink, the clang echoing through the small kitchen. "Why are you asking this?" "Because I deserve to know the truth." My voice trembled. Is Ayan mine?" Her shoulders shook. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I stood there, my whole world tilting again. "Please," I whispered, "just tell me." Through her tears, she nodded. "Yes," she said, "he's yours." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Sarah sank to the floor, crying uncontrollably. "I never meant for it to happen like this," she choked out. "Adil told me you didn't want children anymore, that you'd moved on. I was stupid, I believed him. It was one time. I didn't know I was pregnant until after you two separated." I stared at her, numb. My own sister, my ex-husband, and my child, born into their marriage. I didn't say anything for a long time. Just the sound of Ayan's soft breathing in the next room. Finally, I whispered, "You both took everything from me." Sarah looked up, eyes swollen. "Then take him back," she said through sobs. "I can't do this anymore." I'm not strong enough. You're his real mother. You always were." Her words hung in the air, trembling between confession and surrender. "Take him back." The room was so still I could hear the ceiling fan ticking, the faint hum of traffic outside, the baby's slow breathing in the next room. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her understand the weight of what she had done. But all I could do was whisper, "It's not that simple, Sarah." She buried her face in her palms. "I know. I know I've destroyed everything." I sat down across from her on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet. We were two broken women trapped in the same house, drowning in the same shame. "How could you?" I asked quietly. "You were my sister." "You knew how much I loved him." "I was jealous," she said through sobs. "All my life I was jealous of you. You had what I never did. Direction, strength, purpose. When he started talking to me, I knew it was wrong, but I felt seen. I felt like someone finally wanted me." She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I didn't think about what it would cost. Not until it was too late." I pressed my hand to my chest. "And a deal? Does he know?" She hesitated, then nodded. "He found out before the wedding." I told him. He said it didn't matter, that he loved me anyway. A bitter laugh escaped me. He loved himself. That's all. For the next few days, I couldn't think straight. Every time I looked at Ayan, my heart twisted. He was innocent, a miracle born of betrayal. I watched Sarah from the corner of my eye. She moved through the house like a ghost, barely speaking, barely eating. One evening, she collapsed while feeding Ayan. I rushed to her side, catching the bottle before it hit the floor. "I can't do this," she whispered weakly. "He cries for you, not me. He smiles at you. I feel like he knows." Her words pierced me. I held her hand. "You need rest, Sarah. You're unwell." But she shook her head. "No, you need to decide. If you want to take him, I'll tell Mother it's best for everyone." I didn't answer, not yet, because how could I take my sister's child, even if he was mine, without tearing what little family we had left? That night, I sat on the balcony, holding Ayan in my arms. The moonlight brushed across his tiny face, illuminating that little crescent birthmark. He looked peaceful, unaware of the chaos surrounding him. I thought about the years I'd spent crying over an empty crib, about how I used to pray to hold a baby of my own, even once. Now that I had him, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like punishment. I whispered into the night, "God, what am I supposed to do?" The only reply was the distant call to prayer, echoing across the city. The next morning, I made my decision. I couldn't destroy Sarah publicly. I couldn't bring shame to our mother. But I also couldn't let Ayan grow up believing a lie. I needed the truth to live, even if quietly. So I called a deal. He answered after 3 rings, his tone cautious. "Hello?" "It's me," I said. A pause. "I wasn't expecting your call." "We need to talk," I said, "about Ayan." Silence. Then a sigh. "Sarah told you?" "Yes." "Then you know everything." "I know enough," I said coldly. "You lied to both of us." He didn't argue, just breathed heavily into the phone. "What do you want then?" "I don't want your money or your apology. I want Ayan to grow up loved and safe. That's all." "And you think you can do that better than we can?" I laughed bitterly. "Better than you? The man who abandoned his wife and lied to her sister? Yes, I think I can." He didn't respond. Finally, he said quietly, "Sarah isn't well. You know that." "I do." "Then take him for a while," he said after a pause. "She'll listen to you more than me." "I can't handle this right now." His words hit like a slap. "I can't handle this." Even now, he was running. And just like that, It happened. No paperwork, no lawyers, no shouting. Sarah packed Ayan's small bag herself, his tiny clothes folded neatly, his favorite blanket tucked on top. "I'll tell everyone you're just helping for a while," she said softly, eyes brimming with tears. "Mother doesn't need to know yet." I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. As I walked out with Ayan in my arms, I looked back once. Sarah stood in the doorway, one hand pressed against her mouth. She didn't wave. Neither did I. The first night back in my apartment was the first peaceful night in years. Ayan slept on my chest, his small breaths warm against my skin. I watched him for hours, memorizing every detail. The slope of his nose, the faint curl of his hair, the way he clenched my finger in his sleep. For the first time since my marriage ended, I felt whole again. But I knew this peace was borrowed, because secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, have a way of surfacing. Weeks passed. Sarah didn't call much. When she did, she sounded distant, her voice hollow. "I'm glad he's with you," she'd say. "He's happier, isn't he?" "Yes," I'd answer softly. "He's happy." But I could sense the growing distance in her tone. Something dark. Something fading. Then, one evening, I got another call from my mother. Her voice was trembling again. "Beta, Sarah's been admitted to the hospital. She's not well." My heart stopped. What happened? She took too many pills. The world blurred around me. I grabbed Ayan and rushed to the hospital, my breath coming in short gasps. When I reached her room, she was unconscious. Pale, fragile, barely breathing. Adil sat beside her, his head buried in his hands. He looked up when he saw me. "She'll be okay," he said weakly. "The doctors say she'll recover." I looked at her, my sister, my betrayer, my mirror. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I held her cold hand and whispered, "Sarah, please. You're not alone. I forgive you. Just come back." Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment I thought she heard me. That night, as I rocked Ayan to sleep in the hospital corridor, I realized forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It just gives it a place to rest. And sometimes that's all we can do. Sarah survived. Physically, at least. The doctors said it was a cry for help, a phrase that sounded too clinical for something so heartbreaking. When she opened her eyes 3 days later, she looked at me as if seeing a stranger. "I didn't mean to die," she whispered weakly. "I just wanted it all to stop." I held her hand, tears spilling quietly. "It will stop, Sarah." But not like this. Adil stood near the doorway, guilt dripping from his silence. He didn't come closer. Maybe he knew he had no right. After a few days, Sarah was discharged, but the damage was already done. Word spread faster than wildfire. In our small community, whispers travel faster than wind. "Did you hear about Adil's wife?" They say she tried to end her life. Something about a family problem. Her sister's involved, too. No one said it outright, but I could see the judgment in their eyes whenever I went to buy groceries or take Ayan for a walk. It was as if they could smell the truth beneath the rumors. A week later, my mother called me to her house. Her tone was unusually sharp. "Come today, Beta. We need to talk." When I arrived, Sarah and Adil were already there, sitting on the sofa, looking like two ghosts. My mother stood near the window, her arms crossed. She didn't waste time. "Tell me," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "What is going on?" I froze. Sarah looked down at her lap. Adil fidgeted with his watch. Mother's voice rose. "I'm not blind. I've seen how people look at us. They whisper your names like it's poison. What happened between you three?" No one answered. Finally, she turned to me. "You tell me, Nadia." "You're the only one I can trust to speak truth." The silence was unbearable. I could have lied, said nothing, protected everyone a little longer. But when I looked at Adil sitting beside my sister, My ex-husband, the man who betrayed me twice. Something inside me broke open. I took a deep breath. The child Sarah gave birth to. Ayan. He's mine. The words left my lips like fire, burning everything in their path. Mother's hand shot up to her chest. Yours? I nodded. We went through IVF before our divorce. The clinic made a mistake. They used my embryo when Sarah came for her procedure later. Adil knew. They both knew. My mother turned to Sarah, her voice cracking. Is this true? Sarah started crying, shaking uncontrollably. Yes, Ami. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I wanted to be a mother. I thought it was fate. Adil tried to speak, but Mother silenced him with one sharp look. Not another word from you. Then she turned to me, eyes wet but steady. And you? What do you want to do now? I swallowed hard. I'm raising him. Sarah agreed. But I'm not here to take revenge, Ami. I just can't live with lies anymore. The room fell silent, heavy with years of love, betrayal, and regret. Mother finally spoke, her voice low. You both have brought shame to this family. But if Nadia has chosen peace, then that's what we'll do. No more secrets. No more poison. The next day, the whole neighborhood seemed to know. Some offered pity disguised as sympathy. Others simply stared. But for once, I didn't care. The truth, however painful, was lighter than the lies I'd carried. Still, not everyone took it quietly. Adil showed up at my door one evening, his eyes wild, his voice trembling with frustration. You've ruined me, he said. Do you even realize what people are saying about me now? About us? I stood in the doorway holding Ayan on my hip. I didn't ruin you, Adil. You did that yourself. He stepped closer. You could have kept it quiet. Protected Sarah. Protected me. I laughed bitterly. After what you did? You think you deserve protection? He clenched his fists. I made mistakes, yes. But that doesn't mean you get to destroy my family. Your family, I whispered coldly. You mean our child. The one you lied about. Adil froze. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. I looked him dead in the eye. If you ever come near me or Ayan again, I'll make sure every court in this city knows exactly what you've done. He backed away slowly. You've changed, Nadia. Yes, I said softly, because you forced me to. He left without another word. Months passed. Sarah stopped coming around. Mother visited often, trying to keep some fragile thread of family intact, but I could tell even she was exhausted. Adil moved to another city. A fresh start, they said. I didn't ask. My world now revolved around Ayan. His laughter in the mornings, his small hands clutching my finger, his voice calling me Mama for the first time. It was strange. How love could be born out of betrayal. How healing could grow in the cracks left by heartbreak. But life, as I'd learned, doesn't ask for fairness. It just moves forward. One evening, Sarah called. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. How is he? He's growing fast, I said. You should come see him. There was a long pause. I can't. Not yet. Why? Because every time I see him, she whispered, I see my sins staring back at me. Tears welled in my eyes. Sarah, you're still his aunt. And my sister. That won't change. She sighed. Maybe one day, when I'm strong enough to face myself. And then she hung up. That night, I stood by Ayan's crib, watching him sleep. The moonlight fell gently across his face, the same light that once shone on two sisters who loved each other before envy poisoned their hearts. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a choice I had to make every day, to not let bitterness define me. Sarah may never be the sister I once knew, but she was part of my story, and I was part of hers. And Ayan, he was both of ours. It took nearly a year before the dust began to settle. A year of silence, awkward phone calls that went unanswered, and family gatherings that felt like walking on broken glass. I still remember the day my mother came over with a box in her hands, an old worn shoebox wrapped with a faded pink ribbon. "She sent this," she said quietly. I knew who she meant. Inside were small things, a knitted baby blanket, a few photographs, and a letter. The handwriting was unmistakably Sarah's. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Greater than dear Nadia, I know no apology can erase the pain I've caused. I've spent months trying to hate you, but every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the reflection of the sister I destroyed. You didn't deserve any of this. I thought I loved him. Maybe I did, but it was the kind of love that feeds on envy and loneliness, not real love. You were always stronger, kinder, braver, and I just wanted to feel worthy. I hope Ayan grows up knowing how deeply he is loved by both of us, even if from a distance. If you can, one day, forgive me, not for me, but so you can finally breathe without my shadow haunting you. With love, Sarah. By the time I finished reading, the paper was damp with tears. Forgiveness. That word felt impossible once, but now, as I looked at that letter, I realized it wasn't about absolving her. It was about freeing myself. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in Ayan's keepsake box. One day, when he's old enough to understand, I'll show it to him. He deserves to know his story. The truth, not the whispers. The years that followed were quiet, almost eerily so. Adil eventually remarried, someone far from our circle, far from the memories. I didn't feel anger anymore, just relief. Sarah moved abroad for work. She sent postcards sometimes, little snapshots of her trying to start over. Paris, then Singapore, then back home after our mother's health began to fail. When she returned, we met at the hospital. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes, they carried a calm I hadn't seen before. "Ami's asleep," I said softly. She nodded. "You look good, Nadia." "Happy." "I am," I said, "mostly." She hesitated, then whispered, Can I see him?" I smiled faintly. "He's waiting outside with Ami's nurse." When Ayan walked in, clutching his little toy car, Sarah froze. Her eyes filled instantly with tears. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, kneeling slowly. "Do you know who I am?" He nodded shyly. "Mama says you're my auntie." Sarah bit her lip and nodded. "That's right." He looked at her curiously. "Why are you crying, Auntie?" "Because," she said, smiling through tears, "you're even more beautiful than I imagined." For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger watching her, just an ache, deep, quiet, and strangely peaceful. After that, Sarah began visiting occasionally, never overstepping, never pretending to be more than she was. She brought books, toys, sometimes even stayed for dinner. Ayan grew to love her. In the simple, pure way children do when adults let go of their pride. Our mother's health worsened over time, and those hospital nights brought us closer again, not as the sisters we used to be, but as the women we'd become. Broken, but still standing. One evening, after putting Ayan to bed, Sarah and I sat on the balcony, sipping tea. The city lights flickered below us. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" I thought about it. The years of resentment, the tears, the loneliness. And then Ayan's laughter, his first words, his small arms around my neck. I used to, I admitted, but now, no. I think everything happened the way it had to. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "You're stronger than me, you know." I smiled faintly. Maybe. Or maybe I just learned to survive sooner. Sarah reached for my hand and squeezed it. "Thank you for not hating me." I looked at her, really looked at her. I did. For a long time, but hate is heavy, Sarah. I had to put it down. She smiled, a quiet tear slipping down her cheek. You always did know how to end a story with grace. We both laughed softly. For once, it didn't feel forced. And a few months later, our mother passed away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was simple. Friends, family, a few distant cousins who came mostly to gossip. Sarah and I stood side by side, Ayan's small hand in mine. When it was time to say goodbye, Sarah whispered, "She'd be proud of you, you know." I nodded, tears rolling down. She'd be proud of us. We made it through. Life has quiet rhythms now. Mornings start with Ayan's laughter echoing through the kitchen. I work from home, teaching online classes, making time to bake the way my mother used to. Sarah calls every Sunday. Sometimes we talk for hours. Other times, we just sit in silence on the phone. A silence that no longer feels painful. And every night, before bed, I whisper a small prayer of gratitude, not for what I lost, but for what I found in the ashes. Truth, peace, and the kind of love that isn't about romance or blood, but resilience. The other day, Ayan asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Mama, why do you and Auntie look so sad sometimes when you laugh?" I smiled, brushing his hair gently. "Because, my love, some laughter comes from the part of the heart that remembers pain and still chooses to be happy." He seemed to think about that for a moment, then said, "I think that's brave." I kissed his forehead. Maybe it is. There are days when I still catch myself thinking about the past, the girl I was before everything fell apart. I don't long for her anymore, because she didn't know that sometimes betrayal doesn't end your story. Sometimes it simply forces you to write a new one, stronger, wiser, and truer. Sometimes life doesn't break where we expect it to. It cracks quietly, in the spaces between love and loyalty, between what we owe others and what we owe ourselves. I used to think betrayal was the end of everything, that once someone destroyed your trust, there could be no coming back, not for them and not for you. But I've learned something different. Sometimes betrayal isn't the full stop at the end of your story. It's the comma, the pause that makes you take a breath and decide how the next sentence should begin. My sister and I, we were both victims of our own emptiness. She wanted love. I wanted justice. But neither of us found peace until we realized that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the wound. It's about choosing not to keep touching it every day. There's still pain, of course. Some wounds don't close neatly. They leave a mark, a reminder that we once loved deeply and that love can cut as much as it can heal. But now, when I look at Ayan, his smile, his questions, his innocent laughter, I realize he's more than just my son. He's the bridge between what was broken and what's been rebuilt. He carries both our stories, mine and Sarah's. And maybe one day, he'll grow up knowing that even when life twists into something unrecognizable, love can still find its way through. So if you're listening right now, and maybe you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, maybe even by someone you loved, remember this. You don't have to stay bitter to prove you were hurt. You can let go and still be strong. You can forgive and still remember. Because healing isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about accepting that it did and that you survived anyway. Would you have done what I did? Would you have told the truth or stayed silent to keep the peace? Tell me in the comments below. And if you believe that strength and kindness can still grow after heartbreak, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share your own story, because maybe your voice, like mine, might help someone else find their way back to peace.